The First Million Words, Episode 15, Interlude.
Yeah, there we go.
That's the Skype noise.
Yeah.
So we've covered Guillermo's obsession with tracking down the entire history of Yeti porn. We've covered
and gay Bigfoot.
Yeah, gay Bigfoot.
That's right. We've covered spousal flatulence. What else can we cover? This is a really interesting interview.
Well, let's get to the meat of it. Tell us about your book tour.
Are you recording already?
Yeah, I kind of I edited out all the stuff we don't need.
You've been recording this whole time while we're talking about flatulence?
Yeah, just in case there's some kind of gem. I can throw it in.
Then,
well, every now and then depends on your perspective, but I think we want to leave that out there.
Yeah, yeah.
This will be your mark. Mark, start over. Okay.
All right, and we're rolling.
So.
No, we probably should cut that too, darn it. See, I get going with you guys.
We're a bad influence. It's okay. We had to cut the clean rating off of our podcast a long time ago.
Yeah,
you guys bring me down, man.
Yeah.
This is really degenerated. My God. I thought this was about my book. None of this stuff is in my book.
Oh, well, you should have seen. We interviewed Aliette de Bedard recently, and we got her ranting about the Star Wars prequels. So
nice. Don't get me started on that. That's a long topic there.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I figured we would try to keep this to an hour. Normally, our bonus episodes go 30 to 45 minutes, but we'll give you an extra hour, considering it is the returning of you to our show.
Okay, so I can totally afford to waste time then. Now I got it. I got you.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So, what was the question that you wanted to ask me?
What do you think of gay Bigfoots? No, no.
Every time I think of gay Bigfoot, I think of Guillermo, and I don't know why that is.
I'm not that big.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I think the hairy factor. No, I don't know. I don't know. Let's not dissect that any further, shall we not?
Yes.
Let's not.
So
I thought Harry and the Hendersons was porn. No, wasn't.
So we'll move along. My favorite part was the oh my gosh, what was the dad? What was the actor's name?
John Lithgow.
Lithgow, thank you. When he's like, oh, making that noise. That's my favorite.
Anyway, okay, enough about John Lithgow.
Yeah.
He is not, despite the rumors, he's not going to play Lord Zalavar in the movie.
Oh, that's what I'd heard.
Yeah, no.
Johnny Depp is Davi Ree.
He actually got beat out for the part by this Guillermo Velez guy.
All right.
Yeah. And Manayan is played by somebody named Yeti Samuels. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Yeti Samuels.
As long as he's a Yeti, then I'm all right. I'm down with it. Right. Only gay for Yetis.
Let's actually start the conversation with something about the book, shall we?
Okay, so you're at near the end of your book tour.
Not really.
No, you still got some more to go?
At the end of the first leg of my book tour.
Oh,
my
okay.
tour is actually going to extend, if I can find people to host me, and go into July, and I'm glad it is, because the book, we've had a little problem with the release, and it hasn't come out very smoothly, and we will not have print copies till almost July available. So it's kind of good to keep doing it, because we need to let people know what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I kept the day, I think Tuesday, it was a Tuesday, it was supposed to come out, and I kept clicking the link, and I couldn't, it wouldn't let me download it.
Oh, the ebook?
Yeah. I mean, a couple tries later, it got me. I just went through.
I was going to say, you should be able to get it now, but
yeah.
The ebooks are selling. They didn't have it up for the first day, I don't know why, at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Oh. But they took the print book down and canceled all the orders because it turns out we had to delay it because we had a problem with layout, so we have to go back and fix it. But they're like, okay, you want to go with it or fix it? I'm like, no, I don't want to look like crap. Of course we have to fix it. You're going to sell people a book that's unprofessional. You don't want to let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
They agreed with me, but they wanted to give me the option because they knew I wanted to get the book out. But I'm like, no. I mean, it's more important than that. One of the advantages of working with a small press and with a situation like this is you can do POD, so you can turn your files in a week in advance. The disadvantage of it is if you have a problem, which we unfortunately did, then you don't find out about it until the day before your release day, then you ended up not being able to release your book, which is what happened to us. I mean, we released it, but it's not totally gone smoothly, and so we don't have print available yet, which is unfortunate and disappointing. I mean, but in any case, I'd rather have it right and late than on time and all messed up.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you hear about like what happened with Mary Robinette Kowal's new book?
Hers was missing the first line, and so she gives people a sticker that they can put on that is a bookmark that includes that line, and it kind of solves the problem.
Yeah. But now everything's running more smoothly now. We're good to go.
They're in the process of fixing it.
Okay.
Because get total confirmation, because it took Lightning Source longer to give us a proof copy. Which this is a lesson, guys. Do not skip the proof copy. Always get the proof copy, because once you approve it, you're screwed, because they will be sending out orders to the people who buy them, and you'll be having bad books go out. So I mean, we got the proof copy, we found out it was wrong, and then we had to, say, wait a minute, hold on, and do a bunch of stuff, and I think they had already approved it because they didn't see it at first. They go through page by page because it looked good, and then somebody went through it and stumbled upon it and was like, wait a minute. So we had to get a hold of them and say, hold on, do not release any books. So it was disappointing and frustrating for me, because I didn't know what was going on, and I was kind of irritated because I'm waiting for people to buy my book. And then when they cancel pre-orders, of course, I wasn't real happy either, because, you don't want to lose readers or sales.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of disappointing. But now that I know what's going on, it's kind of like, they're doing the right thing. You got to do it.
Yeah, and it being print on demand, there's not any imperfect copies floating around out there, right?
Yeah. There's not imperfect copies because none of them got released.
Oh, okay.
They canceled all the so that's actually a good thing that they canceled the pre-order, in a sense of not, rather than send them out bad. Although they'd be collector's items like Mary's. Now, the funny thing is, I read Mary's book as an ARC, as an e-file, and so I had the first line. So I had no idea anything was missing. And then I got a hard copy of the book later, and she had told me about it, and I looked, and I was like, oh my God, look, there's like... So I don't know how that happened. That's kind of odd, and that's very rare that something like that would ever happen in the case of a publisher like that. But see, it does happen. It's not like I'm alone.
Yeah. It's good to get that, like you said, get the proof and make sure it's good to go before it goes.
And I love Mary. She's a good friend of mine, and I love her to death. I would never wish anything bad on her, but I will say this: you couldn't be in better company than to be in anything with Mary. So, I'm
you can be in the same sentence, fact,
right, even being in the same sentence, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the whole send it out to her, and she hand wrote the line and sent it back. That was a pretty cool thing.
Oh, you had a copy?
Yeah.
Well, she's going to do that in mine when I see her at Worldcon here in Chicago, but she did it for somebody that won the book on the chat too. So,
oh, cool.
Anyway. So
besides, where are some of the places you've been going for the book tour, or for the first?
Well, I went to SF Signal, and Grasping for the Wind is coming up. People actually, Grasping for the Wind will be kind of fun. It's on Monday. People have been asking for, which will actually be the same week as this probably goes up or something. But anyway, or maybe a week before this actually airs. But anyway, people have been asking me to do an interview, like on my own chat with myself. Not me, have somebody come interview me, but it's never worked out. There's always been reasons why, because I'd have some guests that would request it, so I'd give them the slot, or something would happen, and because it's not about me, it's all about helping the science fiction fantasy community for me. So I'm typically, no, I don't want to save a show for me. I'd rather give it to somebody else. So rather than try to dedicate an actual show to that, I decided to just have Grasping for the Wind submit the normal questions I ask everybody with a few questions that were aimed at my book to me and do a written interview of Science Fiction Fantasy Writers Chat. So it's basically turning the tables. Science Fiction Fantasy Writers Chat interviews me. So that'll be kind of fun. So I've got that coming up. I'm on a podcast this weekend that'll be going on with John Rakestraw, I believe is his name.
Mm-hmm.
Rakestraw. Sorry, John, I have to learn how to pronounce your name.
Yeah.
And that is the platform, which is internet radio. People can call in. And then I've stopped on some blogs of some authors like Moses Sirigar, Linda Poy-Devon, and Functional Nerds did a review, and all kinds of different places along the way. And I talked about food on Jolita Clegg's blog, about the food in my world, of my universe that I created.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Done a couple of posts on social media and how to write sequels, surprise and suspense writing, and a bunch of character profiles with excerpts. In fact, we have another one of those coming up at Raygun Revival on Tuesday after that interview, and there'll be another some more profiles coming up in the second half of the tour.
That's an awesome thing. But any cool stories from any of the cons? Any ridiculous outfits? Any?
Well, there was a couple things. First of all, I did get to meet Chewbacca. Ben, you'll know. I met the real Chewbacca, man. I got to meet Peter Mayhew last weekend and got a picture with him. And I got some cool pictures of people reading my book, which are on Facebook, which you can see, which are all part of an upcoming book trailer that we're going to do. And then, to meet the guy who played Chewbacca and hear some different stories. And people would bring stuff up for him to sign, and it was funny because he and I and his wife are trying to identify which movie the picture's from, and we're like, I don't know, I think it's, look at the collar. That's Han Solo in that's Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back, I'm pretty sure, because he had a different collar in that movie than he did in A New Hope. And we're looking at it, we're doing the comparison, and he's like, well, you certainly can't tell from Chewbacca, Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a different Chewie costume.
Same, what are those called? The bandolier things?
Yeah, bandolier.
Bandolier, there you go.
Yeah. Would it be wrong to ask for, if Peter Mayhew needs a ride anywhere, just so that you can tell, say, dude, Chewie was my co-pilot.
Oh, well, he's in a wheelchair, so he probably wouldn't be real quick to jump on that.
Oh, we can make it work. We'll make it.
He's a very nice man, and his wife is one of the nicest. Angie is such a sweetheart. I really enjoyed talking to her, and, they're one of those people that are like, they charge a fee for this, and he was charging less money at his table for stuff that they were charging more for at the con, because he's like, it's not really about the money. It helps pay for us to be here, and pays our expenses for the pictures and stuff. We're not trying to make money. We're really out here to enjoy the fans and the relationship. So that, that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
well, nice. It sounds like a fun time. Guillermo, did you have one last con question or something? I think you did.
Oh, were there any costumes that you saw that were like, you're like, wow, that is the greatest costume ever, or wow, that is the least amount of costume I've ever seen anyone wear?
Well, there was a girl that was wearing a bikini made out of the tabs off of aluminum Coke cans that I saw at Conquest and took my picture with, and that's on Facebook. And that was kind of fun because she was hilarious, and she was posing with everybody. So I would sneak up and make a lecherous look and just stick my head right in the photo right there in front of her ample bosom. A couple times she was like, ah! Oh, and then she started laughing. She goes, "You're so funny." And I'm like, "I'm just trying to get a picture from my mom to tell her how bored I was at the con." We totally took a picture, and I'm like, "Mom, I had a terrible time at the con." She goes, "Well, it looks like your father should have gone with you." That was the skimpiest costume, I think. Other than there was a pretty skimpy elf/zombie who had to be one of the hottest. I was like, "That's the hottest zombie I've ever seen in my life." I'm like, they're not supposed to look that good.
Yeah,
it's kind of destroying the mystique. But the coolest costume of all, there was a little kid dressed up as Luke on Dagobah in Empire Strikes Back, and he had Yoda on his back. He had a Yoda backpack on his back. So he's carrying Yoda around. It was awesome.
Nice.
Walking around with his lightsaber,
Yeah, I always wanted to do that. Like, just put my son on my back and dress him up as Yoda and run around.
Yeah. How'd that go over?
Oh, we haven't tried that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ben and I could do that. I can just paint myself green with the little ears, and I just be like, "That's right, cocaine you must do." I'm like, "No, Yoda, it's bad."
All I'm saying is if your son ever wants to dress up as a Yeti, keep him far away from him. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. No. Anyway, well, that's a story that other people don't need to know. Anyway, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the con, and I have fun at cons because you meet other dealers, you meet artists, you meet different people. It's an opportunity to network. You meet other publishers. I met some publishers that I might end up doing some work with. Certainly artists. The actors are fun. Different people, and you spend. It's kind of can get boring sitting at the dealer's table. But this is the first time I'd ever done that, where I was basically not doing any panels and just at the dealer table. Mm-hmm. So I had a kind of a nice setup, and that was good. Sales were not as good as they would have been, but the people I met were pretty cool, and that was fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's nice when you get the opportunity to network, because you never know when those are going to pay off. So many of those relationships have paid off in ways already that I never expected. So that's that, and that you can't put a price on that. That's not where that's not the ultimate value of a con. It's not just measured by what you get from it right away.
Mm-hmm.
It's the gratification, So
yeah, and it's good for writing. Sometimes is a very solitary profession. Very lonely thing. So it's great to instead of just talking to people on Twitter or like Facebook, it's nice to actually go out and say hi.
Well, it can be, and it's also good because you get the opportunity to. I mean, I think I definitely have better sales in person than I do any other way, telling people about my book. But you also get to introduce yourself, and it's a good opportunity. Yeah, it's definitely good to get out. I'm introverted, but yet I test slightly on the edge of extroverted.
Mm-hmm.
I know other people like Jennifer Palin. She's very extroverted, and so a lot of writers are diehard introverts, so cons wear them out.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I enjoy kind of that escape because I get plenty of alone time the rest of the time.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that person that like starts out introvert, where I just don't want to go anywhere, and then when I finally get there, it kind of, I realize it's like, oh, I'm here and it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cons are fun. Now moving on to a little bit of the talk and shop thing. We got your second book, The Returning, came out. Now tell us a little bit about writing a sequel to basically The Returning, or The Worker Prince was your first book that saw the light of day that people around got to see. So now you're writing a follow-up to it. So what's that like? Yeah,
The Returning was actually the fourth book I tried to write fiction-wise.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote an epic fantasy called Dune Man in between, which I'm now revising and about have the second draft ready to go.
Nice.
But The Returning was written after I'd finished that and done a few other things, mostly short stories and my North Star Serial collection and things. But anyway, so it's I think, and there was a half novel in between, so it's technically the third full novel I completed, and the fourth one I tried to write.
Mm-hmm.
And in between the first draft of that, I started two other half novels before I polished it. So it was an interesting experience in that. It also was written during a time of great turmoil in my life, and I was writing from scratch. The first story had strong influence from the biblical story of Moses. And although the biblical story of Moses is a framework for the whole saga, all three books,
mm-hmm.
the setup of the Moses type tie-in was pretty heavy in book one. Book two doesn't have as much of that. So I had to come up with something totally on my own without that pre-existing plot structure that I was borrowing from. So that was an interesting thing. And you're asking yourself, how do I get the feel of it and the fun of it without copying it? Because that's the problem with sequels. And how do I write a book that I know can't really have an ending, and yet make it feel complete?
Yeah.
And those were all challenges. So what I ultimately decided to do was I had to up the tension. I wanted to write a book that you literally don't want to stop turning pages because you got to know what happens next. So that's where the surprise versus suspense thing came in. When I was in film school, I learned there's two different kinds of stories. I'll tell you this because I don't know if you guys know this either. There's the surprise story. The surprise story is well, let's do suspense first. A suspense story, the guy's walking along the sidewalk. Okay? There's other people walking. You see him. Then you cut to a banana peel. If you're doing a movie, you cut to the banana peel that somebody just dropped on the sidewalk. The suspense is the guy going to see the banana peel, or is he going to fall? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In a surprise story, you got the guy walking along the sidewalk, other people walking, the guy's eating a banana. All of a sudden, the guy slips and falls on his butt. You don't know why. Then you cut down, and there's a banana peel that he slipped on. Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I didn't see that coming.
Mm-hmm.
So the type of story I want to do is the type where people are like, I did not see that coming. I knew I had done it when I went back to read it, to do the revising for the publisher. I put it aside for about 3 months, moved across country, started a couple other books, worked on a couple other projects, done various things, launched my first book, all these things I did before I went back to it. And so I had really had a good distance and freshness, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, I didn't remember doing that. Wow, that's kind of cool. Oh, wow, that I didn't remember doing that, So that way I got kind of a sense of what the reader might experience reading the book. So that was really good. The other thing I had to do was up the stakes. I really had to make it emotionally, a lot more intense for the characters and for the reader's involvement. And that required me to basically make the stakes so high that not only was it a surprise, but that people were literally, oh my God, what's going to happen next? So I had to pull a George R. R. Martin and kill off a few characters and do some things that people didn't expect. Because the first book, there's some violence and there's some fighting, but there's humor, and ultimately, the people that die are minor characters that nobody knows, and everybody kind of comes out okay in the end. The good guys win, and you don't really have to worry. Well, in book 2, it's not quite so simple.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen to people. You start seeing that anything could happen, and that really upped the stakes. But it also allowed me to, by the end of the book, have finished a chapter to the point where it felt like it ended, even though it didn't, even though it really is a cliffhanger that leads into the next book. It was like, okay, because the reader will want to take a breath and catch his breath before he goes on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's going to want to know what happened, but he or she will still be like, okay, whew, man, okay, it really feels like, okay, there's a next stage that we're going to in book 3.
Mm. Nice.
So that was kind of what I did, and then basically I modeled myself after the Bourne novels of Robert Ludlum and the Bourne movies that came out, trying to be a kind of a relentless pace. This kind of thing where people would read it and they're like, oh, just when I thought I could catch my breath, you did it to me again.
Yeah. It's always fun to read a novel and feel like you're out of breath. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I tried to do, and I mean, it has to come out. It's out now. We'll find out if people think I was successful. The beta reader said I was, and Paul Kemp, who's a best-selling Star Wars author, described it as sets a pace and never takes off like a rocket and never lets up kind of thing. So I think I accomplished it, but that was the goal.
Nice. That's good. That's like going back a little bit. That is kind of a hard thing to do with a first book, especially if you know that it's going to be a series, because you're kind of busy setting things up and introducing characters and stuff. So yeah, that's usually why a second book of a series or a second movie of a series is usually my favorite. Like Empire Strikes Back and The Two Towers. They're my favorites because they just keep going. Now how?
Well, Empire Strikes Back is also directed by somebody other than George Lucas. So it's hard to know how much role that played in it, but nobody's going to write my second book, so they don't have to say that, oh yeah, well, he should have let somebody else write the first one, Yeah. Go and take that chance, But no, I mean, there are other factors, but you're right. And Empire Strikes Back is better. But the other thing is, look, the first book is about Davi Ree, and Davi Ree is the focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's his coming-of-age story. The second book, we've introduced all these other characters, and they have their own storylines that we care about because they've been introduced. So in the second book, they can take more of the stage away from Davi and Zalavar, who are really the focus in book 1.
Mm-hmm.
So really, we have a lot of extra point of view characters going on in book 2 that we didn't have in book 1, who are helping drive the story. We get to know Yao, Brahma, and Fairy and Noah, Davi's best friends better. We get to see some stuff going on with Taylor more. There's Zalavar, but there's also Aron, who was one of the leaders in the first book, but he never had a much of a point of view. And some of the other leaders all kind of take on their own thing. Miri is going through some changes because she used to be the princess, but her brother's not in charge anymore, so now she's a civilian. So there's a lot of different things to explore that expand your canvas of what you're doing with your storytelling, too, because you've already introduced all those characters and world and stuff. But the trick, then, is, how do you do it in a way that people know what's going on? And in some ways I was successful, in some ways I wasn't. I didn't want to do big info dumps where, like, my God, he's just telling us the previous story.
Yeah.
I limited myself to small paragraphs of 3 to 4 sentences max, doing that when it was appropriate throughout, and kind of let the story do that. And I've been told that you can pick up and know what's going on pretty well. There's things you'll miss, and one of those things, unfortunately, is the relationship between Davi and Taylor. I didn't have a lot of room to set that up. So when they start having conflict pretty early on, Taylor's got kind of a bad rap in a couple of reviews because people are like, oh, she's kind of a jerk about this, or they're not sure if they like what she does. And it's because you can't see all the softy part of her character that was in book 1, that the falling in love part's already happened.
Yeah.
And they're going through the growing pains. But I think you'll be pleased by the end of the book, she's got enough self-examination of her motives, and she recognizes why she's done what she's done. And I think people will realize that there's more to the story there. And that arc really continues into book 3. And there'll be some turning of the tables of the situation from the position she's in book 2. She'll be in the position Davi's in, and he'll be in her position. And so that's going to change some of the source of conflict and kind of do it and bring them back together in a way. So I think that that's the other challenge of writing the second book. One of the other challenges.
Yeah, and I think, speaking of, changes and stuff, not only are the characters changing, but I like how at the end of the first book, there's like the whole, political structure and everything has changed. So, that's almost like, like fodder for the next book. It's like you gotta like eat that up like as you're going along. Because I know you were saying you can't just go back and say like, oh well, this is what Moses did at this point. Because you're kind of, that was like the inspiration. But I like that you can end the first book, and it still feels like a complete story, but there's still like this big opening because everything else is changing. And I think that's kind of a hard thing to do sometimes.
One of the challenges of the first book, see, I came up with it when I was like 15 and sat on it for like 25 years before I tried to write it. But by the time I wrote it, a lot of movies had used the Moses story. So I'm like, at first I thought this was great. I'm just going to retell the Moses story, but set it in his face. Well, as novel as that seems, the problem is everybody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the Moses story. So I said, what I'm going to do is just borrow parts of it, and by making them people who came from Earth, Moses can be part of their prehistory. So that real story has already happened, and it's part of their actual history, and these are just parallels that come up that are ironic that I can play off of. So that allowed me to then take the book in some different directions in the work of Prince and not be strictly tied to. There's no parting of the Red Sea. They don't have 10 Commandments. God doesn't speak to anybody that way. He doesn't go off in the burning bush and all that. So there was a lot of things that I was able to do. So in book 2, I'm kind of able to take it off in some different directions and just basically, everything gets a lot more complicated. The plot of book 2 is a lot more complicated. And I know you're just at the beginning of it, but I can tell you what you're going to see about the political machination that goes on in that story is a lot more complex and a lot harder to keep track of because everybody's, in the first book it was a lot of Miri and Salvar kind of working behind the scenes. This time everybody's doing stuff. So, you don't know who's on whose side or who's doing, you don't know. Things are going to turn out a lot of ways in ways that you didn't expect. And that's part of what the surprise element of the story. But also then because I made it so complicated, and because I wrote it through a time in my life where I would literally get interrupted with like daily crisis, and I'd actually not write for like a whole week or 2 weeks or whatever, and then come back to it. That's why I thought when I came back to do the second draft, I thought this is going to be a total piece of crap. And actually, the only thing that was wrong, obviously there's some polishing and things I had to do, and there were a few things where I repeated a section I repeated one scene. I did it 2 different ways, and there were some sections of dialogue that were a little repetitive that I had to fix. But it really wasn't as bad as I thought. Considering how complex it was, though, I mean, I'm not surprised I can remember a lot of it because there's a lot going on.
And I like that you said when you went back to it that you said obviously there was going to be some polishing. That sometimes is a hard lesson to learn. That your first draft isn't your best.
Well, I think here's one of the things about writing. It's never going to be perfect because you're not perfect, and because where I am, look. I look back at the work of friends and I cringe at some of the things that I wish I could have fixed. And looking back at Dune Man, which was written right after that, I mean, it's been 18 months since Dune Man first draft was done. It was done in January 2010 or something. Mm-hmm. It was written a long time ago. So looking back at that, and I'm a different writer now. There's been a lot of rewrites. I mean, I've added like 30,000 words to the second draft, and I've taken out a bunch and replaced them because I've been polishing. So I've been doing a lot to fix it, to make it better, because I tell stories differently now. Mm-hmm. And there's elements of craft and tools in my arsenal that I didn't have then, because that's what the journey of the writer is all about, growing. But I think where you are at one particular point is you just get the book as best it can be at that time, and know that you're going to go back and look at it and say, oh, I mean, Robert Silverberg looks back at Starman's Quest, his first book, and says, oh, man, it's kind of a weak effort, and yet I look at it and it's freaking brilliant, but at the same time, when you compare it to other Silverberg, he does go to more complex places in later stories. And so I think, it's a natural part of the process, and I think if you're not able to do that, that's where you get into trouble. And some people do get stuck in ruts. They get a book, they have a breakout success, and then they never grow because they think they've got it all figured out.
Yeah, they stop learning.
And that's unfortunate.
What? No, so here.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit, Ben. What was that?
Oh, I said, yeah, the thing is, if they have that big success, sometimes they just give up on learning.
Well, yeah, because I think that's where you put people to end up trying to retell the same story over and over again, mm-hmm. because they get stuck in a rut of a formula that works, and they want to keep rehashing the formula.
Yeah.
There are people that do that well and people who do it poorly. Tom Clancy got in a rut for a while where he wasn't doing it very well. Nicholas Sparks has had some books that I thought were great and some books that were not. And the books that were usually not were too close to something he'd already done, whereas the books where he really kind of took it in a different direction were fantastic. Both of those guys, pretty much what you're going to get from their book. They have a pretty strong formula. They don't write near as diverse stuff as some other people do. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I'm going into fantasy is I want to write something different, so I have an option to kind of do something a little different than just the space opera, which I love and adore, and it's fun to write. But you don't want to be kind of a one-note guy. You want to kind of have the opportunity to do something different.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about the whole speculative fiction market, is that you can do that, and nobody really gives you a lot of flack for it.
Well, and I think part of the thing is, everything's been done. There are new ideas. Mm-hmm. There's new approaches to old ideas, but not really new ideas. It's really hard to find a new idea. And so mixing of genres and different things has become such a norm that we're kind of used to it. It's a little different when you get into literary and some of those other forms, although they do mixed genres too. You have to be more careful that it doesn't, that's too sci-fi, or that's too this, or that's too that, I think that's a freedom that we have that's a real advantage, but, it gives you the opportunity to kind of re-examine who you are, and different novels can have different voices. And, that's why, for example, Daniel Abraham told me he uses the pseudonyms because he wants, an M.N. Hanover book has a totally different voice than a Daniel Abraham book, but yet a James S.A. Corey book has a totally different voice. Mm-hmm. So that way, he thinks it makes it easier for readers to have different names. I'm doing them all the same name, at least that's the plan right now, because I don't feel as attached to that idea, but I think it definitely has advantages and disadvantages depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, I know what you mean though about not wanting to use a pseudonym. We interviewed this month we interviewed Rachel Aaron, and she was saying how she's gonna probably try something different than her current series, and along with that she wanted to be like rebranded and have a pseudonym. And the first thing I thought was like, no, don't do it, but that's kind of that's the author's prerogative, I guess.
Well, I mean, how else are you gonna, write what you write and then move to supernatural erotica? I mean,
Well, I mean, see, that's the thing, Guillermo. I think if you're a good enough writer, you can write anything. And I think there are people like Robert Silverberg and Robert Sawyer and others who do pretty diverse stuff that get away with it because they've trained their audience. And other people, it's a marketing thing, but other people are, no, everybody expects a Daniel Abraham book to always be a Daniel Abraham book, and so you have to use a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a newer development rather than an older development. In the older days, writers, Mark Twain wrote a lot of diverse stuff, and people could do it. So I don't know. I may get pressure from publishers to do something different with the name. I hope I don't. I think if I went into a genre like mystery, or I went into a genre like love stories or something, that it might be a little different than switching subgenres within like speculative fiction.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's a little different, but I don't know. I mean, if you're writing paranormal erotica, though, you got to change names because you don't want your mother to know. So I mean, that's a whole different motive,
Well, no, I kind of want my mom to say, "Wow, that is a great book."
Your wife might have the reaction of like, "You're that romantic, and how come our sex life isn't that good? What's up with that?"
Because you're not a Bigfoot.
You gotta be, because you're not a Bigfoot. Oh my God. Okay.
Oh boy.
Woo! He said it, not me.
Always has to do with Bigfoots with you, doesn't it, Guillermo?
It all comes down to the Yeti. Which is why, actually, you'll see Guillermo Velez books, but you're also going to see Yeti Samuels. So that's going to be really interesting. And I have the Yeti Samuels series.
I can't wait. Don't joke around about that too much, because he'll do it.
I will do it.
That's awesome,
But I mean, it'll be funny because I can't write anything serious. I can't. It's impossible.
You'll like my epic fantasy thing because I've got a lot of good humor in there. I put them in where they basically had to grab armor last minute, so they end up in armor that doesn't fit. And one of them looks like a little kid because it's oversized, and the other one looks like a sausage. So everybody calls him Sausage Man. So like even when they fight people, the people start laughing at them because of their armor. It becomes a running gag.
I like that. I always feel the need to, well, because one of my favorite stories from Norse mythology is where Thor and Loki have to like infiltrate like Jotunheim, like where the giants are, and they dress up as girls, like as maidservants or something. So like I always have to have that in a story. Is cross-dressing, yeah.
Epic cross-dressing.
Epic cross-dressing.
It's harder to pull it off when you have a big hairy beard like you do, though, Ben.
Yeah.
I mean, you can cross-dress as Amish, but is that really cross-dress? I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, how do you.
I make a good lawn gnome, too.
Yeah, it's a little. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I'm Amish, or I'm me. That's about the only options you've got.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it depends.
Yeah. So
we're digressing again.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Always comes back to Bigfoot. So kind of wrapping it up now. How are we looking for book 3? Have you started outlining? Started writing? Do we have maybe a tentative release date? I mean,
I'm normally a pantser. I don't do a lot of outlines, but yeah, with these sequels I've had to because the storylines are so many crisscrossing storylines that I really have to kind of keep track of a bunch of stuff. So I've played with an outline. I have a pretty good idea of how the book's going to start. I've thought that 4 times now, and keep changing it. I finally decided there is going to be a gap. Again, there's a gap between the first book and the second book of like a year. There's going to be a gap again here of several months at least. Between book 2 and book 3. Book 2 is the returning. The third book is the Exodus. The first book was the Worker Prince. We're going to have a gap, but we're also going to find out more about Zalavar's background, and we're going to set up some things that happen actually in the story of the Hand of God, which was in my Space Battles anthology, which is set 20 years later. You're going to find out how the Hand of God comes to be and who it is, and you're going to find out some different things like that. And I don't know what the tone's going to be until I start writing of it, but it's going to be more of a chase movie probably because the Exodus is going to happen, or at least going to. I don't know exactly where it's going to end up, but they're going to start the Exodus, and so there's going to be a lot of chasing going on, and so there'll be kind of a different sense of suspense too. And I'm going to still do a lot of action and some of that and some of the storylines, and characters are going to have to deal with the repercussions of some of the tragedies that happened in book 2 and how that affects them and their relationships. And there's going to be a lot of that. And the Davi and Taylor thing may or may not end up in a marriage yet. I don't know whether I'm going to marry him off in book 3 or I'm going to make that happen later. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Now, last time you were on, you said you were unsure if it was going to stop at book 3, like it might go to a 4th one. Now that the second one is out, has that changed? Do you have it set in stone, or is it so fluid?
This trilogy is going to stop at a trilogy and be a book 3. I didn't know if I could do the wrap-up in one book, and I finally figured out how to do it. And that's because I needed that gap.
Yeah.
So all this stuff, I was literally have one book start right after the other, but then I realized there's a bunch of stuff that can happen that I can just kind of skip.
Yeah, I like it when books do that.
Me to tell, because for pacing, you really get into the story better if you skip, and you start in the middle of the action where it's already tense.
Yeah.
Rather than starting somewhere and having to build up to it.
Yeah, like you said, if people have read the first book, then we already have the character introduction and the world introduction. We can just jump right into the action.
Right, but I was going to deal with some emotional stuff amongst the characters and the repercussions, and I'm just going to have them have already progressed in that to a degree by the time we start the 3rd book, and there'll still be repercussions of it, but they won't go through all the stages of grief that I was going to have them go through and things, and there'll be some different stuff that goes on. So that's going to be kind of a challenge. And there's going to be some new characters too because of some of the things that happened in book 2. Some characters that became antagonists that maybe we didn't expect, and some different things. So we're going to have to deal with some of that. A lot of the political repercussions will go on. So there'll be some stuff like that going on, and there's a lot of things to wrap up. So I think it'll be good. I think it'll be a lot of fun. There's definitely room for a lot more action, and to play out a lot of the different arcs of the different characters a little more, including the storyline between Davi's father, who really wasn't in book 1 until the very end. He was at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah, the very beginning and the very end. Yeah.
Right, and then he's kind of more has a bigger part in book 3. In book 2, he was more of a supporting role, but he's in and out of it. But in book 3, he's going to have, I think, his own subplot, at least at this point. So there'll be a lot more going on with that.
Well, cool. Well, then to wrap everything up, we didn't get to ask you this the first time because you were our first guest that was ever on the show, and we didn't really have a list of things, but we've started asking authors if you have any kind of quick fire advice on just how to finish. If you're writing a book and you get halfway through and then you get distracted or you get something comes up, how do you push yourself to get through to the end?
Well, I never write the ending of any novel until I've gone back and done the second draft. So I got halfway through the final chapter, what I think is the final chapter of Dune Man, and stopped. Put it aside, and now I'm coming back to it. And that part of that's because I knew there were a lot of things. I think I like complex plots. Some people criticized The Worker President, said it wasn't as complex as it could have been. I think I upped the stakes in Dune Man, and I definitely upped the stakes in The Returning. But we'll see how people react. It's not really for me to judge. But I do like to have a lot going on. And so when you get to a certain point, things have happened that you've had to come up with devices to make the story work and to make the twists and turns work. And you really have to go back and set some of those things up. And I don't feel like I can write the ending until I've done all that. But that's second draft labor. So that tends to be my approach. I think if you get stuck, though, I'm not skipping your question. I'm just kind of explaining my process before I answer it.
Yeah.
If you get stuck, you have to figure out why you're stuck. Now, there are different ways of dealing with that. For example, my friend Katie McIntyre, she writes the ending first and then goes back and writes everything leading up to it because that makes it easier for her to write the book. I don't know how she does it because that's totally the reverse of me, where I write the ending last.
Yeah.
I know other people like Paul Kemp. Paul will skip around, and whatever scene he's inspired to write, he'll write, and then he'll fill in the gaps. Other people are very linear. I tend to be very linear.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I'll skip a particular scene to write the next one in a subplot if I know what the scene's going to be, and come back to it. But you have to figure out what is the thing that's making you stick, and where's the problem. And usually it's something you've already written in there. For example, in The Worker Prince, I rewrote the entire first chapter because I started out at graduation with Davi, Farian, and Yao, and it was just boring banter. After a while, I was like, what do I need this? And it was much better to cut that to after the graduation and just have them explain that the graduation has happened and have them get right into the action of their conflict with Bordox comes up right there at the beginning, and they have a chase scene and all that right at the beginning of chapter 1 of Worker Prince, and it was a much better introduction to those characters. So I think you have to figure out whether have you written something that doesn't need to be there? Have you started in the wrong place? Why are you stuck? And once you figure that out, then you can go back and fix what you need to fix and move on. The best way for me to get around it is to put the thing aside and work on something else that has a different tone and a different style, and try to write that for a while first before I get back to the other one, so that I may spend a day or two on that and then come back to it with fresh eyes.
Nice, I like that.
All right.
I mean, doing that, you'll find that plot things will occur to you in the other book that'll be like, oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm. And then it's like you're still getting stuff done. Like if one thing's holding you up,
you're still productive. And the other thing is, because you need to write every day. But there's nothing worse than sitting there knowing that you're writing crap and keep writing it every day just to force yourself to write. You just feel like it actually makes it more tense and worse for me, more stressful to feel like I'm doing that rather than actually making actual progress. So it's easier for me to actually write something that has some value. But that's why I always have my novel going, but I have short stories, and then invariably when you publish, like I am now, there's actually going to be a period now where I'm going to have probably a year or at least several months before I have to polish another book. Mm-hmm. But in the last year, I had to polish The Worker Prince even as I'm writing other things. So you end up having a book that you've already worked on, you can switch to and switch back and forth and polish, which is kind of nice because you have deadlines for that you have to meet, and you end up just automatically having something else to work on. Nice.
Now before we wrap up, Guillermo, anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, the thing is, I just got started on book 2 on The Returning, so I mean I don't have a lot of questions about it right now because I don't want anything spoiled. But so far I'm digging it. I dug the first one. I'm digging the second one, and I can't wait for the third one. Well, I can wait only as long as I finish the second one.
How far are you guys?
Well, right now I'm like a chapter in, so I'm like I need to. I don't know. I just haven't had, thanks to work and moving and painting and it's. It's been busy, but I managed to get it.
Yeah, I've literally just started it like a couple days ago, and I saw the part with like the weird shadow thing. And then I had to put it down, and I keep thinking like, I have to go back because what's that weird shadow thing?
That's the first scene.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like the first scene, man. You haven't even read a page and a half. You can't really even say you started the novel, man.
Yeah, well, it's hard with a 2-year-old that likes to steal my Kindle while I'm trying to read it.
Oh, don't blame your son, man. He's going to have enough reason for guilt in his life. Don't put other things on him before it's necessary. Yeah. Come on, man.
All right, so
I'm just not feeling the love from you guys. It's terrible. So much for the name Benjamin Love, man.
Well, I am 89% through La Migra, so.
No, I'm giving you a hard time. People always think, like even like and I learned this from other authors too. People always apologize for not reading your book. I would love everybody to read my book because I would like to be successful. And I definitely like to have a career as a writer, but I mean, you can't be mad at people. It's just a lot of books to read. I mean, I can't read everybody's book either. There are people that I'm friends with that it took me forever. I found Kat Richardson's book, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. And I felt so bad that I hadn't read her book. And she's like, oh, I don't get mad at people when they don't read my book. But half my family doesn't read it because they're like, I don't want to read that. That's not the kind of thing I want to read, You can't get, and she's a bestseller. You can't get upset at people for not reading your book.
Yeah.
It's not going to be for everybody. You hope that what you do is find your target audience, but not everybody you know is going to be in your target audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying anything about you guys not being in the target audience. I'm just saying that I'm teasing you, but it's all in good fun because I don't, people read at their own pace and they do. I mean, heck, my dad's like, I think he's like a third of the way in for the last 3 months. The book 2. It's like, dude, you had it before everybody else, but now it's out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No excuses now.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So then, so wrapping that up, that's The Returning. Is book 2 of the Daviri saga. The Worker Prince is book 1, and people can find you online, BrianThomasSchmidt.net. I always feel I have to say it's Brian with a Y.
That's right.
So don't forget that. And then you still have the science fiction and fantasy writer chat thing going every Wednesday night at 9 Eastern on Twitter.
Yep.
Did I leave anything out? Oh, you have the short story coming up pretty soon.
I have a short story called La Migra that's going to be my first print magazine sale. That is in Tales of a Talisman. I actually sold it like in March of 2010 or something. I mean, it's been a long time.
Oh, wow.
But he was like, it's too big for the issue that he was buying for.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I like it so much I want to buy it for the next one, but it's going to be a year. So I've had to wait. But, Mike Resnick wrote me a story for the space battles, and they waited almost a year before that thing came out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
When you're excited about a story. People do it all the time. It's part of the business. But it's fun because my name's on the cover of the magazine, and, it's finally getting... And it's one of the magazines I picked up early on when I was reading science fiction, and so it's kind of fun that I'm finally in that magazine, and and it's my third short story I ever started, so it's kind of fun to see that come out, and it's totally different in tone than a lot of the stuff I've done.
Nice. So. Yeah. It's fun so far. I like I said, I'm 89% through it because you were kind enough to let us read
That's why.
it.
See, you should have told me that. See, now I can't give you a hard time about not reading the book because at least you're reading me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm reading the homework.
I distracted you. With my story of the two Mexicans that sneak into the U.S.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun too. It's a lot of fun. So,
are you getting the humor of it? I hope you are.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It's supposed to be pretty ironic,
Yeah.
It's okay. You won't be getting any letters from the NAACP. I promise you.
Well, no. I mean, it's funny. I know I'm dragging this on. You want to wrap it up, but people do get sensitive about that when you write something. But the truth is, I wrote this story and I consulted with Border Patrol people. My friends who lived in Mexico read the story for me, and they're like, yeah, you're playing a little bit on Mexican stereotypes, but those are real people. We know those people. We've seen people like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you use it in an exaggerated way for the humor of it when you're telling a story like La Migra, which is all about cultural conflict and how one set of people is looking through a completely different set of eyes than the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that they each interpret things is totally different. And then you throw the alien into it. Originally it had the Border Patrol as a third point of view character, but I had to kind of put it out because people were really struggling and it was too long and all this. But, so I had 3 conflicting point of views originally. But the Border Patrol guys now really only at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fun because things are not what they seem. Neither side is really seeing what's really going on.
Yeah.
And there's humor that comes out of that, and that's what happens every day. We do that. We all do that all the time because we make assumptions based on our limited facts and our little box that we live in, and those assumptions are totally wrong about what's going on in somebody else's mind. So that's what the story's about.
Nice. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a lot of fun so far, and that comes out in July or.
Yeah, I think he told me. Well, it's almost the end of June now, so it probably is July. He told me it was not going to be June; it was going to end up being probably July before it came out. Okay. He said he's got it. I think it's at the printer right now, so it'll be shipping pretty soon.
Nice. So we look forward to that. And again, what was the name of the magazine?
Tales of the Talisman. It's edited by my friend David Lee Summers, who's one of the authors that wrote in Space Battles, and he also has edited some of the Full Throttle Space Tales series and other things as well.
Yeah, that's right, and Space Battles is out there too, so that... And then Rivalry on a Sky Course is still floating around out there, and I think that's...
And I've got 100 more hilarious dinosaur jokes for kids coming out soon, that's ebook only, and I'm actually writing a bio of a guy that bought the Jacksonville Jaguars, who is a Muslim. He's the first non-white owner of an NFL team. I'm writing his bio. And I'm working on 2 chapter book series for middle grade preteens that are science fiction and fantasy oriented, including one that is called Abraham Lincoln, Dinosaur Hunter. And it's the early days of Abraham Lincoln before he started having to hunt vampires.
Nice. People don't know this, that he hunted dinosaurs and vampires.
Well, yeah, it's actually Lincoln goes back in time to try to solve the Civil War and ends up, a little bit further back in time than he met. So it's going to be kind of
I like that. That sounds like a lot of fun.
awesome.
So, Brian, again, thanks so much for coming back to the show. We're glad we didn't, offend you so much the first time that you wouldn't want to come back.
No, you guys are I always have a lot of fun with you guys, and I think a lot of people do too. And I hope that a lot of people will come on. I appreciate the opportunity and your friendship, and it's fun to joke around with you. And thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, and
sure. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us.
And we hope the returning does awesome.
I hope so too, and I hope we get the print all straightened out and get it going here. I'm excited to actually hold a copy of it in my hand. It's weird to have a book out and not have a copy.
Oh, I'm sure.